Back here on the show now to continue what we've been talking about over the last couple of days, starting this new topic on just getting an earlier understanding of what each team across the NFL really needs to do to upgrade some of the spots on their roster. And actually, while I was doing this segment on the Giants, I realized that I missed the Minnesota Vikings in the NFC North, right? I went through the Bears, I went through the Packers, and the Lions, but I missed the Vikings. So we're going to do that tomorrow. But on today's show, we're going to continue with the NFC East and talk about the Giants, right? Things fell apart quickly for the Giants after they had that exciting upset over Seattle early in the season. They followed that up by losing the next 10 games consecutively, and then you started with all those off the field issues, right? With Daniel Jones and benching him, right? So they could avoid, giving him that bonus, and then you have him out there playing like scout team safety, and it's a bad look. It rubs some of the players the wrong way. It was made like a big deal, obviously, as it should have, and that led to them trading him to the Minnesota Vikings and things like that. So there was a lot of it was just like a big mess everywhere, right? On the field and especially off the field for the Giants this past season. And now I feel like there's a lot of pressure on this front office, right? That one, they were able to stay another year. I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that, but John Merrill wanted to keep the same voices in there, and Brian Dable and Joe Shane are back at it this offseason, and now they earned the number 3 pick after going 3-14, and I believe with that and the offseason, approaching, they could go in a multitude of different ways, right? With this roster that needs a lot of help, obviously, but I think the biggest ones for them are going to be quarterback, obviously, linebacker is another one, and wide receiver as well for me, right? You could probably point out other ones that need upgrading, but I think the three main ones are those three. And this could be, if we're really like talking honestly, this could be a season where it could be the last for Brian Dable and Joe Shane if they do repeat the results of this past season. So there's a lot on their plate to make sure they get this right this offseason, unlike last offseason, right? Where again it was another big mess, it seemed like. So looking at the positions I just kind of laid out there, starting with quarterback, the most obvious one, right? The Daniel Jones era is over. After selecting him earlier than maybe a lot of people thought, and going through the trials and tribulations of that with Daniel Jones, all the highs and lows. Now we're officially moving on from that. So what do you do with a weaker quarterback class this year, right? What do you do with a quarterback class that not many people are so high on, other than maybe the first two? But even that, I've heard a lot of people say that in other draft classes, maybe these quarterbacks wouldn't have been so highly regarded. But that's to each his own, right? That's how you evaluate this class versus other class. And for me, when it comes to the quarterback position, I'd love for them to go off of what Malik Neighbors said recently on drafting a rookie quarterback. I believe it was yesterday, when he said that if the Giants were to go down that path, that he would really like it if they had a veteran quarterback in there as well with a potential rookie that they were to draft. And I thought that was a very savvy and like experienced thing to say. Malik's only going into his second year, but to hear that from him, to kind of give some advice to his front office and say rookie quarterback is great, right? He'd love that, but you probably should have a veteran in there to kind of show him the ropes and make sure this thing goes smoothly, rather than having a rookie in there who might be mature. You never know, but it makes it a lot harder when you're just out there and you don't really have someone saying, you should have done this here, or maybe instead of that, because it didn't work out for me, this is what I learned from it, and you're passing those tips on to a younger player. I think that would be very beneficial for them, right? And I love that Malik Neighbors said that, and the obvious ones are Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. They will be 80% of the mock drafts and the links to the New York Giants. But it seems like they're very interested in this path. I've seen them interact pretty heavily with Shedeur so far, especially at the Shrine Bowl, at least. And you see a bunch of stuff on social media about it. So it seems like, from what I've seen so far, that they're very interested in a rookie quarterback. Selecting so high in the draft, that could be something that becomes very likely for them if they, continue to go down this path. But also in free agency, there's a couple options that you could explore, and maybe with that, third overall pick, if you do get your quarterback already and aren't in love with, maybe like Abdul Carter and like Travis Hunter are gone or something, or maybe one of them's there. Maybe you try and get one of them on your team with a free agent quarterback and try to go down that route. I don't think that's an awful idea. So they could do that, and the quarterbacks in free agency, you got options like Jameis Winston, Sam Darnold, who will probably be the most expensive. You have Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, who we just finished talking about as well. Those would all be very solid options if you were to just kind of like put a bandage on it, quite honestly, with most of these guys, and try to improve the rest of your team. I don't think it's a bad idea at all. So for the quarterbacks, it's going to be tough, kind of evaluating everything, because it feels very like a very cloudy position to focus on this offseason. So that's one of the ways they could go with the quarterback spot. And the other position I was looking at is linebacker, because I feel like they need more guys making plays in the middle of the field, right? They don't really have like a presence in the middle of the field, like the Eagles do with Zach Bond, or the Commanders had with Bobby Wagner, or the Cowboys had with Overshown, and all these great teams or these great players in their own division. I don't feel like the Giants really have that in the middle of the field, defending the middle of the field, having that general sort of quarterback operating the defense and making sure everything is in line. I think that is something that would really bring them a lot of good if they brought more discipline and more just efficiency on that side of the ball, because they got good players on there, but sometimes they could look very sporadic and just very sloppy at times, and I just feel like they need someone there to kind of keep things in check. And you could go down free agency, and I know I mentioned Zach Bond. He's going to be a free agent this year, so I know the Giants don't have a ton of cap space. I think they're still in the top 10 most cap space, ready teams. So that's not too bad. But knowing that Zach Bond's going to be a free agent, and knowing that the Giants need a guy like that, I would give him a blank check and just say, like, let me know what you need. I just need you in New York, right? If Zach Bond would really consider that, that's what I'm doing to try and make sure I not only add Zach Bond, but I take him away from the Philadelphia Eagles. That's one thing I would do. But you also got guys like Nick Bolton, who's playing in the Super Bowl, obviously, this year as well. And Steve Spagnuolo, I just finished reading, compared him to Patrick Mahomes for them on the defensive side of things. So he seems to be a player that a former coach of theirs has regarded as a very talented and a very good player. So you can go off of that, see if Nick Bowen is interested in joining him, and I'm sure it wouldn't hurt his decision if you gave him a very favorable contract as well. So that's another option they could go down. And Dre Greenlaw also, he's going to be a free agent as well. And I know the injury is pretty scary there, right? It's a little bit of a hesitant situation, but on his best day, Dre Greenlaw is one of the most underrated linebackers, I believe, in the NFL. So having another guy like that, I think, would be great for them. But then in the draft, this is a spot where I don't know if I would necessarily go after linebackers that early. You can get guys late, but the most popular names I've seen so far at like middle linebacker and stuff like that are Jihad Campbell from Alabama, Barrett Carter from Clemson, or Carson Schlesinger from UCLA. I think all of them are solid options, but preferably I would like to see the Giants really pursue one of these free agents. I would think that's the best option for them, at linebacker. But the next spot I would say would be wide receiver, right, for them, because Malik Neighbors is clearly the guy for them, and I like Wan'Dale Robinson, but Darius Slayton is also a free agent, and I'd like to see him just add more playmakers there to make the quarterback's job a lot easier, right? And I think if you start looking at the draft and start looking at your options there, you're not going to draft really any of the consensus top five, like the McMillans, like the Travis Hunters, like the Ibukas, or the Luther Burdens or Matthew Goldens, right? I feel like those guys are the main top five in this draft. You're not really going to draft any of them at number 3, and unless you're trading back into the first round, which I advise against, you're not really going to get any of these top guys in the draft. I don't think any of them are really going to drop down, but it is a deep class. So if you do want to add to these guys and just add a solid option, I would prefer for them to wait later in the draft to get some prospects, in the third round potentially, or the second round, even if they want to do that, right? I think that would be more effective for them to add a wide receiver that way, or in free agency, they could bring back Darius Slayton if they so choose, or other options we've mentioned, like Amari Cooper, Stephon Diggs, Chris Godwin, Hollywood Brown is another one. They got options at this spot as well. So that's why with the free agent class and the draft class that seems to have a deep wide receiver group, I think this is a good opportunity for the Giants to add someone and see if they could steal them off the market and get them in New York, right? Making it more of an attractive spot for any quarterback or any free agent quarterback, or I should say rookie quarterback, to come and join them if they add to that spot. So quarterback, linebacker, and wide receiver are all spots that I think the Giants do need to upgrade. And if they upgrade all three, I think it would be a very successful offseason for them if they're able to do that, right? But we'll see how aggressive they are. They weren't too aggressive last year, so I'm hoping they rebound from that and really test the market out there this year. But we do have one more segment to get to. That's not everything we're going to talk about. We got to mention over in Green Bay, their starting running back, Josh Jacobs, had a pretty clear and direct message to his team as to what he wants to see change in 2025 in regards to the personnel of the Green Bay Packers. He wants to have a pretty clear upgrade at one position. So join us back here for the next segment to find out what position that is and what Josh Jacobs had to say about it.